my letter journal partners. It's Missladypetal, alias Peter. I'm very excited to update my letter journal video, and this is to answer every single question that Gina Ahrens and I have received in the multitudes since I launched the concept in March. So my first video was not as well shot as this one, and I'm really happy to have a much better idea of how I video and how the audio works. So the letter journal swaps have some basic rules around them, because when you're posting letters internationally, you need to consider the costs involved in posting heavy and large articles, and also the financial ability of your other participants that live overseas to cope with overly large envelopes and parcels. I am currently involved in 9 of these swaps, and I have been doing this for quite some time. So join me in this list of instructions and follow along. If you have any further questions, please comment on the YouTube video. This video is mainly for Krazy Island family members indulged in letter journal swaps. If you wish to indulge in a letter journal swap or participate in one with me, or would love to be part of a community that enjoys doing activities like embellishment swaps and letter journal swaps, you can go to Krazy Island Family on Facebook and ask to join. I'm an admin person there, and it's easy. We accept everyone and we enjoy everyone's journey in art. And that is the easiest place for me to be able to facilitate a letter journal swap with anybody that wants to participate. So thank you very much, and I'll get straight into the rules. Okay, I'm going to follow a list of questions and answers that have come up since I've started doing letter journals. This is supposed to be very informative, and I hope that you will be able to follow along. I have done all the measurements and weights in both the metric system and the imperial system. So there are inches and centimeters, and there are ounces and grams. Okay, what size is a letter journal? I happen to have one here. Here is a current letter journal that I will be sending out shortly. This letter journal is 8 inches long, and it is 4 inches wide. I'm going to put this piece of paper here so that you can zoom in and understand what I'm saying, and you can write these references down while I'm talking. So the reason why it is 8 inches long and 4 inches wide is so that it can fit into a standard business envelope. The envelope is 8.5 inches long and 4 1/4 inches wide. So it's 8.5 inches long this way and 4 1/4 inches long that way. The reason we make it a little bit smaller is because by the end of this journal being finished, it will be much thicker than what it currently is. There will be some extra pages pasted in, some collage work and some paint, and by the time all of this comes back to you, it'll be much thicker, and it still needs to fit in one of these envelopes. And that's not including any happy mail that may be included with the sender, that the sender puts in the middle of the journal as well. So the next thing that's really important here when we're talking about the importance of letter journals. In Australia, I try to keep this letter journal under 50 grams. Now for Australians, and it's a little bit similar in the States, and I know it's a bit similar in the UK. If you send one of these locally, it's local postage because it fits in one of these envelopes, and we write documents only on the side of the envelope so that it doesn't get opened by customs, right? So that was a tip that Gina Ahrens gave me when she sent me some email, some happy mail, she put documents only. The first couple international letter journals I sent were all opened by customs, and it delayed their delivery by a week. So it's important to make sure that you follow these instructions very clearly. This is so that everybody's journals are the same size and roughly the same weight, so that at the end you can bind these into a book, and all of the letter journals that you get back can fit in either Gina's letter journal pocket book, or you can bind them with like a Coptic stitch into a normal kind of a journal. Alright, so you want to keep these all the same. Like I said, I've got 9 out in the field at the moment, and when I get all of those 9 back eventually, I will put them all into a book, and that is another video that I will do. So it is really important that you make sure that you adhere to these guidelines. So the 50 grams. So 50 grams is not very much. In ounces, it's 1.763 ounces. The reason for that is it costs me $2.60 to send anything under 50 grams anywhere in the world, and I'm in Australia. I know that the costs are very similar in the United States. I have been participating in numerous swaps in the United States, and if you think about it, 1.763 ounces is not very much, particularly once this starts having heavier papers pasted into it, because I know a lot of my people, for example, I'm a watercolour artist, and a lot of my journal buddies ask me specifically to do a proper watercolour painting and put it in the journal. I use heavy grade watercolour paper. It's much, much heavier than the photocopier paper I use in here. So it's important to start very thin and to make sure that we have a little bit of leeway to be able to build up the layers in these journals, and to possibly include happy mail as well, and the envelope is included in the weight as well. So if you use a heavier grade paper and hand make your envelopes, that will add to the weight of the overall package, which is why I try and keep them in these very thin standard envelopes. And I make sure I tape them shut so they're not easy to open, because sometimes they do get opened. So what kind of paper do we use in letter journals? Okay, for me, I use thin grade photocopy paper, just normal office supply copy paper. You could also use grid paper. So I've got a journal here that I've not done very much in. I've just glued a little bit of scrap paper that I had onto one of the pages, and I have used an extra piece of copy paper that I decorated and glued that to the front and the back. And I did that before I bound the journal. So it's very important that you reinforce your covers. Your covers need to be able to withstand the wear and tear of the postal system. And if anyone's ever done one of these before, they understand that these can get just that little bit beat up if they're going through the mail 4 times. So that's very important. You start thin, start light, because by the time you end up, it could be heavy, and it could be going over that 50 grams or 1.763 ounces. Very important to take note of that and make sure that you either play this video back and make sure that that question is answered. The next thing is, how many pages do I put in a letter journal? My rule of thumb is that you get 4 sheets of normal copy paper, and then you fold them in half, and then you guillotine the ends so that they meet up for your 4 inches width. That gives you 16 pages, including your cover. So your cover you then decorate in any way that you see fit, and inside is then up to you about what you do. That should leave a double spread for all of the participants to participate in. There's the first one here, another one, another one, another one, another one. So let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, So there's 7 double spreads available. I recommend that you put a few patterned papers. Like, you can have a look at this. I've put a little bit of an atlas in there and marked where I am. Sometimes I put world maps in. Sometimes I just add, that's a jelly print of a handmade stencil that I made. And I put that in, and somebody can add and paint over it and add things to it. That's what it's about. Before I send this off, I will do a complete double spread, which I need to understand that might be covered up or added to in the process if another artist feels that they could add value to it. But I will do a complete double spread of something that is unique to me in my own journal. This will get posted back to me. This is the journal that I'll end up with, right? The next question that I was asked is, how many of these do I make? If I'm in a group of 4 people, how many journals do I make? The answer is simple. You only make one. You only make one journal, and then that gets sent in a round robin in the same order. You should always be sending to the next person on your list. And the person that's sending to you should always be sending to you. You should not be sending this to anybody else because it is a round robin. So you will always receive the journal from the same person and send it off to the same person, no matter how many people are in your list. So that is very clear. You only make one, but you work in everybody else's journals that land in your letterbox. So the only journal that you don't work in, except when you first send it out, is yours. You work in everybody else's journals that dump into your letterbox, and then you send that off to the next person on your list. So where do we put and how do we remember who's in our list? For the purposes of the Krazy Island family letter journal swap event, I'm limiting it to 4 people because I'm not putting many pages in it. If you have more people than that in a swap, you're tempted to put more pages in it, which is fine if you're doing a local or domestic swap. I have a letter journal that's got 2 signatures in it going with for a local person here in Australia. That's still only costing me 70 cents to post. So domestic swap groups are great, but international give a completely different flair. I got an international journal from a friend of mine in the Netherlands, and all of the paper in it that she used was in Dutch. She had Dutch stamps. She had Dutch everything, and I love the fact that there was international flair in that. And quite frankly, if she'd done some of her letter journaling, she might not have even done it in English. She could have written it in another language, which I just think is even more exciting again. So where do we put our email addresses, and where do we put our international mailing addresses? And make sure you put your country when you email to letterjournalswap@outlook.com. Then you need to make sure you have your complete international mailing address. That includes your country. So sometimes I get participants that only give me a US mailing address and they forget to tell me that they live in Canada, or they live in the States, or they live in Venezuela, or they live in the Philippines. So it's really important that we do that, because you can't guarantee that everybody will remember exactly what you're doing or where it's going next. So I'm going to just turn this over because I've already written all my slots, and I'm just going to get some strips of paper and cover up some of the addresses, because it's really important that I don't disclose anybody else's addresses in this swap. So bear with me while I add this in. Right, so here is the back of that journal. I'm just going to zoom this in so that you can really see what I'm doing. Okay, so I am at the top. The important thing to note, that when you get your list of addresses, if your name is not the top, you need to put your name at the top of your journal, because that's where it's originating from, and that's where it will end up being sent to. Then wherever your name appears on that list of 4, You then pick the person directly below you, and then you add in their name and their complete international posting address. And you keep going until all of those addresses have been added to the journal. This is really important because essentially when I send Teresa this journal, she then needs to know who to send it to next. And believe me, if you're only sending these out once a month and you have, because sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks for journals to travel between countries internationally. So we make it monthly so that to give people a little bit of time to actually complete the journal and what they want to do in it and then post it off. So it's very important to have those addresses put in very thoroughly and on the back of every journal. Do not put them anywhere else. It can get confusing if we have people in our groups that are not nearly as experienced in letter journaling as I am. And we do have a lot of new people, which is the reason why I'm doing this new letter journal video. How do we bind? I usually just bind with thread. Now, for this one, I've used a pom-pom thread, but that might actually add a little bit too much bulk to an envelope sometimes. I usually try and have a flat thread, bookbinding thread ribbon. I've got some fibres here for this one, and they're very thin and flat and feathery, so you can make it look pretty. I'm going to add probably beads to these but when they come back, so I think that's exciting. That's something that I'll embellish. I make paper beads, so I'm going to embellish these further when they come back to me. You do a normal bookbinding. I usually put 3 holes and then only 2 stitches. You may do more if that's what you want to do. But for both of these, a general rule of thumb is that I will make 3 holes and I will put a knot in the middle, just a single knot, so that these don't pull. And I will punch 3 holes. Very simple. But I was asked, can I staple mine? I have a long edge stapler, and can I just put that in and staple down the middle? And absolutely you can. It's your journal. You can prepare it in any way that you wish. You just need to take mindful that it can't be heavy, and it also needs to be able to lie flat. What sort of mediums can I use in these journals? So what can I use for my art? Because we're all mixed media artists, aren't we? And we don't always like to have flat works. So in this kind of thing, you can use anything that you like, except things like modelling paste, which is heavy and it's also lumpy. You can Mod Podge collage, you can add papers in, you can paste paintings in like I do with watercolour paper. But to be able to have the freedom to do that kind of thing, you can paint, draw, stamp, you can cut out, die cut, you can write sayings in, you can put tissue paper in, you can do jelly prints. It's exciting what you can do. You can doodle, you can do deli paper borders, you can do anything and everything. Let your creative juices flow. You can see these are 2 very different journals that I'm sending out, and I like to really mix it up. And I like to use a lot of photocopies of my own work and also jelly prints and all sorts of things to cover mine. So be creative, make it unique. It is your journal, that's what's coming back to you. So put some effort into it. How many people in a group? I've limited it to only 4. There are only 4 in a group. You can do more in a group if you want to do a letter journal swap privately, particularly if you're only doing a domestic swap, because it won't increase your postage all that much. But internationally, I've found that it more than quadruples the amount spent on postage. And really, for me, I'd rather spend $4.60, which is the extra that it costs me. I'd rather spend $4.60 on Happy Mail that goes inside this than just having a heavier journal. So we don't want to blow out our postage costs before we even start, because it limits your ability and the affordability of the project as a whole. And we need to keep everybody in mind and all their different situations. How does the swap work? It works where you make your journal. You then look at the next name on the list. So you look at the next name on the list of your journal. And then you go down to that next name, and then you address the next envelope, and you pop it in and you send it off. And make sure that you send it airmail, and that you write documents only on the side. If you want to decorate your envelopes, but there's no need to decorate your envelopes because we're wanting plain envelopes. And the other thing is, make the address very clear. Make sure that you put the country on it, and make sure you have a return address sitting on the back. That's very important. I also tape up my envelopes so that they're harder to open because I don't want anyone having a look inside. The next thing that I do before I seal up the envelope is I might add a few little bits and pieces in. So I might get a few little journaling bits and pieces, and you can notice that most of these are paper, right? I might add in a few tags. I might add in a few fibres. I might add in one of my own original prints of an artwork that I did, or some flower embellishments for people to work with. It doesn't matter. It's not compulsory to send happy mail in these, but it's a nice blessing if you can. And it's more available, that option is more available to you early on when you're first sending. And remember, all of your happy mail will only go to one person. You're going to send to the same person throughout this swap. So that this mail will only ever go to the same person. So you might make an agreement with that person that you will send happy mail, but when it reaches its goal weight, you won't send any more. That's just the way it goes. So it depends on your personal preference and your ability to pay more for postage and how much you want to bless the people in your group as to what you will do. But I'm telling you now that the rule of thumb is that there doesn't have to be happy mail in an envelope. But I know in Crazy Island family that we all love to send happy mail. So it's okay to send happy mail. But it is a blessing, not a requirement. How much do I decorate my journal before I send it out? Decorate the front and the back covers to whatever you would like. Make sure that you have 1 or 2 papers or printed pages or collage pages that are started but not finished. And make sure that you do 1 double spread that is your own artwork that you're happy with to see again, but may be covered up or added to in the future. That's my rule of thumb. It works very well that way because there's plenty of spreads then for people to start from plain white paper or to start from patterned paper, if depending on their style and what they see and how inspired they get by what they get. I think that just about wraps it up. If there are any other questions, I will add or amend this video to answer those questions. But thus far, those are the most important things that I've come across in letter journaling. I'm keeping this relatively short because I want everybody who starts embarking on a letter journal swap, to watch this video and make sure that they note down all of the details in it. Happy swapping, everyone, and if you get one from me, I'll have a Missladypetal sticker on the back of the envelope, and I can't wait to swap with you. Happily journaling, everyone, and ciao for now. Remember, learn something new every day. It keeps you young.